We got a tip from somebody that Aaron, her sister, knew. We got Aaron to get this guy into car and take her, and I followed them. We were following them to the trap house, and Aaron was going to go in to see if Andrea was in there. We're going to be outside armed, ready to crash. This is all true, and I know it sounds crazy, but we there's nothing a family, our father or a sister wouldn't do.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. I'm Miles Reef. I'm here as always with my buddy Sean Cahill. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. Unsolved homicides, missing persons cases, stories without an ending. Sean, what are we getting into today?
Hey, Miles. So today we're following up on our coverage of the Andrea Knabel disappearance case from 2019. Last week we made the case breakdown for that. If you haven't seen it yet, you should probably go watch that first. It's going to give you the nutshell description of like who was Andrea, what do we know, what do we not know, and what is the mystery that we're going to go deeper on today. Once you know that, this is the video to follow it with. It's Andrea's father, Michael Knabel. Now, this is a guy. God, I don't even know how to describe this interview other than it's pretty astounding, and that it sticks out, to me, even in the dozens of interviews we've already done on these cases. I mean, this is a dad who has really gone to the ends of the earth to try to find answers in his daughter's disappearance case. In some, circumstances there, it's even caused further damage to the family, which you will hear about. But yeah, this is a pretty important interview for this case, Miles. What do you think?
Agreed. Yeah, I was blown away by Mike. Obviously, we always talk to people before we do the on-camera interview. So we've had some conversations with him before. I already was impressed with him as a person, but he gave us some anecdotes and just the lengths to which this man has gone to try to find his daughter. I think will leave an impression on everybody, and it's definitely worth listening to. There is probably a scripted feature film in his story just by the actions that he's taken.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It really does almost sound like something out of a crazy movie or a thriller, with the heartbreaking touch that there's no resolve yet. I mean, this guy's still dealing with the middle act of a story like that, where everything is in sort of disarray and chaos, and he's trying to find out what happened here. So there's a lot of players involved in this story. There's a lot of mystery as far as what Andrea's life was really like. This is a woman who was in transition between having a pretty normal life, working a corporate job, and then sort of falling into the wrong crowd, possible substance abuse. It seems like the family doesn't exactly know everything that was wrong, but there was clearly things not going right in her life. And then one day, she disappears. So what does that mean? Is this something that happened that was an accident? Was it a random attack from a stranger, or was there some connection to the troubles she was having in her life that led up to this? And we just have yet to unravel it. So Mike's going to go through all of that in great detail, and I think we should probably just take you to him because the preamble is never as good as the real thing, right, Miles?
Yeah, let's get into it. Here's Mike Knabel. Well, Michael, thank you for jumping on with us. Thanks for joining us. I think the best place to start, where we always like to start, is the easiest thing, which is why don't you just kind of tell us who you are and why we're chatting with you this afternoon?
Um, my name's Michael Knabel. I am the father of missing Andrea Knabel. I'm a retired individual, have been for a couple of years from the financial services business, and been spending a great deal of time for the last nearly 7 years now looking for my daughter in many ways, and hope to talk to the audience and give them a lot of color and hands-on experience that I've had in this search, and to disclose everything we know about it to see if we can help find her.
Thank you, Michael. Well, let's start with Andrea herself. Why don't you kind of tell us who she was as a person, and where she was in her life, and just so everyone can actually understand who she was.
Okay, from a father's perspective, Andrea was my firstborn daughter. Her mother's name is Cheryl, and very precocious young woman. She was way ahead of her time in every way possible at a very early age, saying her alphabet at age 18 months, knew her colors, and she seemed to stay like that and very, very precocious her life and seemed to be the golden child, if you will, not like how it was projected on some other channels. She was delightful, outgoing. Everyone was her friend, very empathetic. She knew everyone. Everyone loved her. She was very outspoken, a great sister to her two younger sisters, Erin in the middle and Sarah as the youngest. And excellent child, excellent in school, straight A student. We took her out of even a parochial school to put her in a math science magnet because we wanted to challenge her a little more. And she did that for a while, then came back and finished high school at a very nice parochial high school here in town, and continued her education into the University of Louisville here in town, and got her degree in a business degree here. So delightful kid, very friendly, never met a stranger, outspoken, fun, and acted as a second mother to her two sisters. She even was assigned a nickname because of that, and her nickname was Mother Andrea. And so just a delightful young lady, and we felt very privileged to have her as a daughter.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement from a father if I've ever heard one. That's great.
It's all true.
I love it. So, as an adult, obviously that kind of covers a lot of what she was like as a child and the precociousness and the maturity. But what about as she grew into a young lady and sort of came into her own? What did she want to do with her life? What was she doing with her life, and where was she at?
Okay. Andrea seemed to be very, very independent, to the extent that maybe she didn't like the corporate lifestyle she had chosen. She worked for a local, very, very large healthcare company. I'm not even going to mention the name. It's not that important. I don't think she liked it that much. She worked at the office and then home for a while. We had some horrible things going on in the world, and this country and this community during those times. Andrea um, worked for Humana. Right after she went missing, we had COVID, the Breonna Taylor protest, and the town was on fire. But she seemed to be very independent. She didn't like working there. She moved out of there. She got laid off with a large layoff. She did a whole bunch of different jobs. She was very industrious. She had a very independent streak. She had several side gigs. She liked to purchase volume things and sell them on the side on eBay and whatnot. She liked to do that, and she even picked up a couple of restaurant jobs on the side. So she was we could tell she was not lazy, but she wanted to do things her own way. Very independent. I would say that she would have been much better off as a some type of entrepreneur, if you will. She grew more and more independent. You know what? She stayed away from me when she would do things that I wouldn't agree. And when a woman turns, I guess, mid-20s to 30 to mid-30s, a father doesn't get all the news and everything that's going on. Maybe I'm sure it's run through a couple of screens, but we had a reasonable relationship, but it wasn't what I desired. And I didn't necessarily get to help guide her. And she didn't necessarily want to listen to me or her mother at that point. Very, very independent nature. And she when she left the corporate life, if you will, she got into some I guess some circles that really weren't of the type of person that she grew to be as a college graduate and all that. And she got into some things, and I think she made a lot of friends there, and she had friends all over the county. And as in any county, there's very, very good sources of people and some not so good. And she knew people everywhere, and very empathic. I think she found several broken men in her life. She tried to save them, or she didn't like them and moved on. But she found some people that I thought were somewhat broken and maybe beneath her current state. And I think she was going to have to do a lot of work to repair these people to get them to where she wanted to go eventually. But she hung in there with them. And I think with those men and other people brought crowds that she really didn't have a lot of business with. And I think it got to her. And you know what? I don't know if I'm the what I think it's somewhat the father's role to notice if things aren't on the right track, even when they're adults, to say some things. And they've all heard me say, including my grandchildren as well, is if you're running around four people like this, you'll become the fifth one. I'm not even going to name the topic or the instance, but it's true. It is absolutely true. And I think she had some bad influences in her life, and I think she thought she was bigger than that and could handle it. And I think eventually it got to her. She adapted and adopted some of the things that I think were negative, and as that happened, she removed she pushed our relationship further and further away, and we would only see each other on birthdays, holidays, Christmas, you know, things like that. And so it would be here and there. And she wouldn't confide in me. She knew how I felt about some things, and when that happened, she removed herself. To a very large extent, and so I got a lot of news about her from her sisters that I still had good relationships with.
Well, I think it's interesting what you're saying because it sounds like she was the kind of person who looked at herself almost as like a savior or a rescuer and thought that she could get involved with people that maybe were sort of dangerous, and rather than her bring them up, they dragged her down. But it does beg the question, you know, the way you're talking about it, it's kind of hard to say what, like, can you be a little more specific? I mean, are we talking about circles of drug users or criminals or just people living on the skids? Like, what exactly was it that had you concerned about this crowd?
Well, some of the people ran in circles where all of that was involved, and they knew people that were in those circles, and they all kind of go to the same places, do the same things. Um, Andrea, I think she had a very normal lifestyle for probably 90% of her life. And I think in that last 10% is when it took a wrong turn. And I think it got worse and worse. And I think she was so prideful and she was so industrious. She thought she could work her way out of it. So she still probably thought that she had things under control, but she didn't. We found that she was out of control. And I found many of those things when we examined her life with a fine tooth comb, including finances and circles she ran in and people and what they were doing and what was going on with them. We found out a lot after she was gone. I did. And I think she hid a lot from even one of her best friends, which is her middle sister, Erin.
So I think maybe what we should talk about, because we're going to get down the path here of kind of examining what could have happened. Maybe we should just lay out what did happen that we
Right.
know, and then we can come back and sort of keep exploring that if that makes sense. So what was like where's the best place to start here, Mike? I mean, I know that Andrea's living situation was a little odd. Her relationships with the family were strained in kind of every direction. And that night, what unfolded was really unusual. So why don't we just take it from the most natural starting point and
Yeah.
just go
Well, and
through?
let's just set up that we're talking about the evening of August 12th, 2019, right?
You're right. The 12th is when she was having the dinner over at Cheryl, her mother's house. And things got started there a little bit. And I can start there just as well. Do you want me to start there?
Sure, sure. Well, where was Andrea living at this time?
Andrea was had a girlfriend that they shared a house with. That girl moved out and Andrea lost the house. So she moved in with her mother on Chickadee Road in a city within Louisville called Audubon Park. Very nice, nice big old houses, a country club attached. So, you know, a nice place. And living arrangements, I'm sure, weren't great when a 30-something-year-old moves back into with her mother with children. I'm sure that's not comfortable fully for anybody involved. And so the night of the 12th, August 12th, 2019, uh, it started out that the house was under repair. The owner of the house, Cheryl, that's Andrea's mother, was not living there at the time because it was under repair with the bathrooms remodeling. So Andrea's youngest sister, Sarah, and her fiance at the time were doing the remodeling. They were remodeling bathrooms. So water turned off. They were changing locks because of people had been coming in and out of the house. Cheryl, the mother, was away, but she had came over that night, and I believe she brought Chinese food over for the family to eat. And they were getting ready to sit down to eat, and some uncomfortable questions came up to Andrea. They were asking her about what she's doing, and giving her advice, and maybe getting a little too strong with her while she was trying to enjoy her meal. And I think Andrea got very upset, and there were a few heated words. Andrea removed herself, went upstairs, and that was that as far as I know. I don't think anything physical happened. I think there were words. My information says that they were encouraging Andrea to find a job that was suitable for her with her education and all that. And Andrea just didn't want to hear it at that particular time. Who knows what was going on in her mind at that time. So that went the way it did. A little bit later that evening.
Sorry, Mike, was that kind of like out of the ordinary, or was that like a continuous topic that would kind of come up within the family?
Well, I wasn't at that household, so I have been divorced from Andrea's mother for a long time, and I mean over 20 years, so a long, long time. And I feel it came up, and it was probably a condition, is my understanding is of Cheryl, which is Andrea's mother, allowing Andrea to live there. The fact that she needed to actively look for suitable employment so she could reestablish her own residence. And so I think it just finally got to her, and Andrea had some words with several people and went upstairs and removed herself from the situation. Well, Ethan was nice enough to take Andrea out for a bite to eat after that. I think they just ran up the street a few blocks away to a McDonald's. So this was Sarah's fiance, Ethan. His last name is Bates. And so anyway, Ethan took Andrea to McDonald's a few blocks down the street, and then later on dropped her off at a quick or urgent care place because Andrea had some infection on her face. And I think she was messing with it a little bit. So I think the infection grew worse. And so she went to urgent care and dropped her off, didn't stay. I think Andrea had some type of Uber card or something to return home. And that's what she did. So she went to her urgent care. This was around 11 o'clock, 11:30 is my recollection. And then came back, and it's my understanding that the doors were locked. And so she walked from her mother's house where she was staying to her sister's house. And this is Aaron, who lives, maybe a half mile to 3/4 of a mile away in a very safe area. And so she walked to Aaron's house. They hung out for a while, took it easy. Aaron had a friend over, and I think they were actually sitting out drinking a glass of wine. And Andrea was inside, I think, just taking it easy inside her little townhouse. And so after being there a while, Aaron took her back to her mother's house, hoping that she could get in, and she just dropped her off there. Then Aaron had to come back home because she had two children at the house and needed to relieve her friend that volunteered to babysit for her while she dropped Andrea back off at her mother's. So that's where it started. It didn't take long. I don't know what happened to Andrea between 11:30 and when she came back over. But the next thing I knew is, I'm dead asleep and this is the 13th, the morning of August 13th, 2019, at 1:38 in the morning. 1:38 in the morning, I got a call. And Andrea was at her middle sister's back door again, back to the townhouse that she walked back to. We think she walked back to. She could have, who knows what happened between those hours. Um, we have a lot of rumors and we're pursuing a lot of leads on that. There are a couple of things still hanging out there recently here. So um, I could hear Andrea upset while I was on the phone with Aaron, and Andrea was wanting in the house, and Aaron's upstairs where the bedrooms are was under construction too. So there really wasn't a room. And Aaron and I spoke, and I said, Aaron, my advice was you to call your mother to make sure Andrea can get back in the house and tell her to go back to the house. And that's what the plan was. So Andrea, very upset. She was not happy at all. She was very, very upset. I could hear her crying. And she finally settled herself down and began walking back to her mother's house. Um, after that, I just fell off to sleep and I thought things were under control. And not until the morning. But we've tracked Andrea via Google back to the house. She made it there within 15 minutes of when we were on the phone with her. So, well, we know her phone made it back there anyway. So I assume she's with her phone. And we thought she was there for a long time, but the private investigator said that maybe not. He found a drop down that we didn't know until late in the investigation that showed her leaving within 10, 15 minutes after arriving back at the house around 2 o'clock in the morning and walking several blocks away down a street that intersects with Chickadee, where Cheryl lived, a street called Audubon Parkway, uh, moving towards Preston Highway. And that's where her phone was last picked up. And it was around 3:30-ish in the morning. And so we don't know what happened between 2 and that time. And we don't know what happened after that 3:30-ish time when her phone flicked back on for a little while. It went off for a while. Then my understanding is that it flickered on for maybe even less than a second. And apparently it was out of juice. The battery had died, apparently. And I understand that happens sometimes, and it never came on again. And we've never seen Andrea again since then. I can tell you that I didn't hear anything else about this until maybe 9 or 10 in the morning. Aaron started calling around and asking how Andrea was, where she was, and all this stuff. Called her mother and a few friends of Andrea's. Andrea, when she didn't have her children, had been known to go to some of her friends' house and stay the night and hang out. And we thought that may have been something that happened too. We thought this was just a normal night, but frankly, it's never normal when somebody's out walking around at night at 1:30 in the morning on a Tuesday morning during the work week. That is so abnormal. It's a bad sign, obviously, especially for someone like her.
Yeah. Um, so it just kind of begs the question because she's going back and forth between these houses, and obviously, everybody has kids present and rooms under construction and stuff. And so it's kind of like, there's no room in the inn. But it seems like people were also frustrated in the family with Andrea. Where was her behavior different, like leading up to then lately after losing the job? And you're mentioning the crowd she's running with. Like I'm sensing that there was a level of just frustration with her that sort of boiled to the surface that night with everybody's dealings with her. Is that correct? Or am I on the wrong track there?
I think that's correct. Obviously, I can only speak factually about my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she came to me looking for help, and unfortunately, some of the major people that follow this story only covered half of the sentence. When I identified to her state, I repeated it. I know it sounds hardcore and maybe even verging on browbeating, but it wasn't. I just simply said to her, Andrea, you're homeless. You don't have a car. You don't have a job. Well, the other uh, person or group that covered this story visually left it at that, like I was browbeating her. But the second half of that sentence was, "But Andrea, I have a place where we can go and get you some help. And yes, I'll give you the money you need, but you've got to get help with this, and so we can get you right back on the right foot." And that's exactly what I said to her, and tried to help her. And I mentioned earlier that how proud she was, and for her to reach out to me to ask for money is a huge step for her. She was in a desperate situation, and as prideful and industrious as she is, it just proves it. I mean, because she would not do that unless it was the last second. And I tried to help her, and said I would help her, and she wouldn't take me up on it at that time, and
Right.
we lost her before we could really help her to the extent she needed, or to the extent that she would accept it.
Right. But Mike, I got to ask, what kind of help, if you're comfortable talking about it, what kind of help were you offering her in that moment?
Well, I knew some of the people, including a guy she was dating. I knew he had some issues with substance abuse, and I think when things fell apart for her, I think she started down the road of maybe experimenting or being around these people. Maybe she finally, probably trying to get him to quit, he probably got her to maybe try some of these things. I'd never witnessed it, but there is some physical evidence on her face. Sometimes you start to see some differences. My understanding, when you do some of these different types of drugs, and I did know that this individual had a problem with that, and he had some problems with the law with that also, including incarceration for some of those things. Um, by the way, that individual that she was dating at the time, he was in jail when Andrea went missing, and he testified on the video that was made, and very scared, to wouldn't show his face on that. And not long after he came out, he was released. He was recorded falling backwards off a viaduct by a door camera and died. Fell on the street, laid there, and I think it was January with 15 degrees, nearly froze to death, and died in the hospital shortly thereafter.
So,
Wow.
this is a guy with some serious substance abuse problems, I would assume, to
Yes.
end up in a situation like that. So it seems like, just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Andrea kind of came to this later in life, like in her, she wasn't, like a lot of people kind of like mess around when they're in their teens, and then they kind of, get to college, get their act together, stop partying. It feels to me like almost like she had like a second childhood after she lost that corporate job, and kind of.
I think she got lost, and I think she was desperate, and I don't think she came to the people that love her, that would give her good advice. And if they did, she wouldn't accept it. The people that truly cared about her life, and a lot of people used her along the way, used her for a lot of things, stole from her. When you let those kind of people in, there's a posse, if you will, for no other term to use, and these people that wander on the peripheral, and they stole from her. And Andrea, I found much later, after she was gone, when I went through her locker, her storage locker, she was in a lot of trouble financially too. And I don't even understand how it happened, and to this day I don't understand how it happened. And so that's an end of it. That's a mystery to me, even at this point, over it's about 6 3/4 years after she's been missing.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
so
can
she
see why
was
you
in
were
a
so
really
concerned.
bad place in her life. And I think none of us knowing that, her sisters didn't know it. I don't think her mother knew it. She was hiding these things from us, because she was so proud, that thought she could solve the issue herself. Um, and I think she kept a lot of it to herself. Um, she was still looking hard for a job. We found that even after she was gone, I believe it was Erin saw on her phone that there were callbacks for job interviews and things. So she was working to come back, and I don't know what happened to her, but it's likely she would have made a comeback and got her act together. And but we don't know who took her. We don't know what happened. We don't think she would have left voluntarily, and we're still looking real hard. There's so many instances and guesses and things, but we haven't been able to nail anything down for sure.
So just to be clear, you are not currently of the mind that this was an accident and she accidentally fell into a storm drain or something like that. You think that most likely another person was involved in her disappearance.
Yeah, I think these connections she had, somebody on the peripheral of the people she knew, possibly.
Hmm.
Maybe she finally got to reach somebody to come pick her up. And, there's some of these people around them. There are violent people around them. Who knows what happened? It could have been a drug overdose. She could have been disposed. She could have left voluntarily. We hope she's in Mexico City or somewhere with a nice job somewhere, and started a new life. We really play that that's a possibility. But anyway, we to this day we really have no clear idea or no favorite idea on what happened or one certain thing. And there are so many things and so many people that this could have happened. There's uh there's so many angles that I can get into, a lot of them later. And if you want to ask me, and I'll be glad to talk to them. But some of them are pretty awful. We've heard some awful stories. We've had people call in and tell us what happened to her in the most descriptive, ugly ways that you can imagine.
And these people that have reached out with these stories, some of them probably just wackos from, from who knows where
You
we
think
don't
that
know. Yeah.
you think that I could play it for you and you would say it was absolutely this girl's telling the truth. This girl was
Wow.
crying as she was saying it, and said, begging us to forgive her for not being able to do anything. This girl said she was there too, and where these girls were housed and possibly trafficked, and she wouldn't participate. And she begged for forgiveness. I don't want anything. I don't want any money. But saying this is what happened. I'm so sorry. I couldn't do anything about it. And you'd have to hear it yourself. And probably anybody that heard it would probably make them upset, cry.
So possibly then the opposite of what I was just suggesting. Like these are actually sort of credible sounding people that are contacting you.
It was my judgment. I mean, I know I'm emotionally involved in the 10th power, but maybe a professional could to do better. But the person that did this should win some type of acting award if you would have heard it.
Yeah.
And we do have it on tape somewhere, and it is available. And I believe I spoke to this on the Dr. Phil show, exactly the same scenario.
When does the official investigation start? Like when does this get to the police and when do they start taking it seriously? I guess that's the question.
So Tuesdays is when we lost contact. Tuesday morning, she reached the house at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then supposedly she left there, and we don't know what happened after that for sure. Her Google timeline was tracked away from the house. And like I said, on Eastern Parkway towards Preston Highway in the area. And we really don't know what happened after that. And it lingered. We got up in the morning. Aaron started calling around. I just assumed everything was all right until I got a call later that morning. But Aaron called her mother, friends, me, and thinking that Andrew would probably stand with one of her friends. But we became very concerned by the afternoon when she didn't check in, because she usually checks in. And we thought there's a possibility she's really mad at all of us, and she could be.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can understand that in the frame of mind she was in the state she was in. She could have been thinking that everybody that loved her rejected her that night. So I'm just going to go and leave. Um, so we tracked her walking away. We don't know if anyone picked her up for sure. We don't have any proof of any of that, but there's so many different things I can talk to you about, but only one of them's right. That means probably 100 different things that we pursued are just absolutely maddening, going in the wrong direction. Um, the police are very different. They obviously want to talk about the last place she was seen. And there are some discrepancies on what happened when she returned back to the house. I think there was a change of stories. That's not a good sign. There were some phone calls to people in the house. And I know that the police seed conversations looking to extract more information that they don't have. They do. They have a whole bag of tricks that they use. And that could possibly be, but they were very concerned about the people in the house and the effect that had. I believe at one point it was stated that Andrew they never heard Andrea when she got back to the house, and
We're
that would have
talking
been
about
about
Sarah and Ethan now, right?
Sarah
That
and Ethan
contingent.
at their mother's house that were
Right.
doing the rehab on the bathrooms, and most normal people would be asleep at that point, obviously, um, and I can't make judgment on that, but my information said that they were pressed on that and said that Andrea did return and they did see her. And I'm talking about Ethan. And he said that she was acting a little crazy and I was afraid to let her in. Give me a break.
Hmm.
This guy's 6'3", 6'4", young, strapping guy and afraid of my daughter. Come on.
Right.
Um, Andrea's never committed violence towards anyone that I know about. I mean, the quotation mark that I know about. I don't think so.
And this is
So
his second story, like you said, because before he had said that, they didn't hear anything. If she came back and knocked, they were
that's right.
asleep, right? And then later it becomes, all right, well, yes, she was there. We saw her. We heard
Yep.
her. I was afraid to let her in. And so it's hard not to notice that, right? Like that's a very interesting evolution of that story.
It absolutely is, unless they just don't want to talk to the police about anything. They just don't want to have any part of it. You would
Hmm.
say something. I can see people saying that.
Hmm.
So the people at the house were questioned. They gave their statement, and they did their job with that. But that's all they did. And they proceeded to over the next few weeks to finish the rehab and move back home. They have a house. They live in Lexington, Kentucky, about 75 miles east of Louisville. So very short distance away. Uh, so so the week went like this. So after a day or two, after we're continuously call around to Andrea's friends, no one knew where she was. We became very worried. I believe we're at Wednesday there, and I think I talked to Aaron very early Thursday morning. I think it was Thursday morning. I said, Aaron, it's time we bring the police in.
Hmm.
And we called the police and they came to take a statement. I believe late Thursday morning is my recollection. Keep in mind, guys, this is 6 3/4 years ago. I'm giving it to you straight as I remember it.
Fair.
And that's not the part.
You're doing an amazing job, by the
That's
way.
not the part I rehash in my mind every day. There are
Right.
other things that will never leave, but that's not it. So it got really real. I had feelings. I just it's from a father's perspective. I didn't feel her, and I said I'm never going to see her again, and that's the first thing I thought of. Um, Friends of hers were contacted. She belonged to a group that searched for missing people and she worked with a private investigator who also would worked on some of his cases to perform searches and things like that. And so those two teams got involved in the case within the next week or so. But the group was called Missing in America, and there were about 5 different women, maybe 6, that were involved, and they came together and we started doing searches all over the place. We looked in every ditch, every creek, every piece of woods, within a mile. And a lot of times, 2 or 3 times, we brought dogs in and did searches, different teams. People came we had one come up from Louisiana. We just had a team here that had searched before, do another search for us about a month ago. And so this is the family and other friends that are helping are still very active. We're still getting leads on the family tip line, and I'll give you that number later. And we are still actively searching. So search is everywhere. From my perspective, which is what you want. I was still working full time as a financial advisor. I didn't really have a team, so I was pretty much a lone wolf. So I did have to check in, but I did have a backup that helped me with my job. My days were very long, as you might guess, probably 3 or 4 hours sleep, a broken sleep, and for the next 500 days, I was trying to do that. I was out looking at sites where she'd been seen. I was falling asleep out in the field because I couldn't do it anymore. We went through homeless camps. We went through uh, different shelters regularly just to see if anybody'd seen her. We went to hotels. We went to everywhere you can imagine. We put flyers in every corner of the community. Uh, we trashed houses of persons of interest. I'm not talking to the police. It was me, the private investigators. We were armed, both armed. Very early, she was seen not far, maybe 5 miles away in a very, very rough part of town, which has some cartel interest and a lot of drug activity. Um, Imagine walking through a project area at midnight with a flyer and a flashlight armed, knocking on doors. You don't know what's coming out of there, whether it's going to be a shotgun or a vicious dog or whatever. But we did all of those things, and thank God nobody got hurt. And we continue to do things like that. We had other places of interest. We had we got a
Mm.
tip from somebody that Erin, her sister, knew. We got Erin to get this guy into car and take her, and I followed them. We were following them to the trap house, and Erin was going to go in to see if Andrea was in there. We're going to be outside armed, ready to crash. This is all true, and I know it sounds crazy, but we there's nothing a family, our father or a sister wouldn't do, and we did what we could do, and that was the last time I let Erin out in the field, to my knowledge. Um, we were using my middle daughter as bait. That this I couldn't tell. I said, we're not losing her, and you're not doing that again. She would have done it without me, by the way.
Yeah.
If I said no, she would have done it without me. But I said, Erin, we can't lose you. Your children need you so much, and so we kind of put her inside and let her handle the social media, which is a huge part of this. Huge.
Yeah.
And she'll fill you in on that. And it's just been amazing what she does and what she continues to do right now. She runs 5 pages on crimes and finding missing people, and actually helps other people with that right now. So 500 days out there of searches, and just all seemed crazy. We saw 3 or 4 lookalikes that, I mean, these people were so close to Andrea, I couldn't believe it. And one walking 10 feet in front of me, and we were on an area I was sitting. We finally found her, but it wasn't her. And, running, scrambling down the road, thinking you see her, and slamming on the brakes and running back, and somebody that doesn't look anything like her. And things like that, all hours of the night. I can tell you it was a horrible time. This was the Breonna Taylor protest in this town. This town was on fire. The whole downtown was boarded up. It was chaos in the street. There were drag races. There were donuts in the middle of Broadway. There were gangs of 200 and 300 people roaming the streets, tearing things up, looking for trouble, protesting. I got caught in a couple of them in my car and made some wrong turns. Lucky to make it out of there, by the way.
Yeah.
But My experience goes further. It got, some places got dangerous where you fear if this car quits right now, I'm gone, or that kind of thing. Um, the private investigator I work closely with, Mark Baker, who's now deceased, um, he warned me. He goes, "In your nice little shiny car, they're not going to like that. Have you ever heard of bumping?" I said, "No. What in the world is that?" He goes, "They're going to pull up beside you and they're going to try to bump you off the road." And I'll be there within a week. That happened to me once, and a week later it happened again. And with my anticipation, I made a miss. I saw what they were doing. I just went like this and back. And this was in the middle of Broadway, where all the chaos was going on in the city of Louisville. So it was a horror story of endless nights and days stealing a few hours of sleep, is my experience. Um, seemingly absolutely hopeless, but you have to continue. Um, I had to back off after about, I mentioned the word 500 days, and because it sticks in my mind. Coming home at maybe, I don't know, 3 in the morning, one of those nights, I was about 3 blocks away from my house and I couldn't tell where I was. I got lost.
Oh, wow.
My brain, there is a limit. Everybody has a limit. You have a limit, and everybody else who hears this, they have a limit. I reached my limit, and I said I better back off because I'm not a young man. I'm past middle aged even now, and I'm 70 years old. And when this happened, I was about 63, 64, and so it's been a long haul, and we have a team. Erin and I make a great team, and she's been relentless, and we keep each other going, and we try to get the family even tighter. And but I have to tell you that this broke up the family even more too. Sarah became very, very angry at me. My youngest daughter, she doesn't speak to me at this point. And
Over your search, or what? I mean, what was the problem there? It seems like you're trying to find your daughter.
she thinks that I've made several accusations against her
Hmm.
fiance.
Hmm.
And I think she took it very personally. And but the police are always going to look first at the family, the people closest to her, and she knows
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And especially the ones that are at the residence, they have to be cleared. And there were some really, really odd statements. And with full disclosure, I have to tell you, there was some very bad blood between Sarah and her fiance throughout their lives. They went to college together at the University of Kentucky, and there were a couple of instances where I had to go up there and bring Sarah back home
Hmm.
because of situations they got into where they weren't getting along. And really, 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 really strong story. I might as well tell you guys this. Um, One time, the last time I was bringing her home, I told her how upset I was at Ethan for doing this, and she told me to be careful around Ethan, that he knows people that can make you disappear.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And that hit me later when Andrea went missing, like a 2x4 upside the head. And that was a very bizarre statement that came back straight to my mind when she went missing. And I said, God, I hope that's not. Just for full disclosure, me and the whole family, that would be the worst possible thing in the world if my family knows anything about this or knows who's involved or were involved. And obviously, that's going to be a first place. Any police force, any
Hmm.
private investigator, anyone would look. And so they've looked there. They've looked at the rest of us. Um, there have been no lie detector tests done by anyone. Um, DNA samples were taken from us, and there have been several cases where they thought they had found Andrea. Um, they had remains in the Delaware River outside Philadelphia. Um, you could see a picture of Andrea, what we thought was Andrea in the morgue. It looked so close. Can't believe. On the way to making Finding Andrea, the docuseries, I got a call from a sheriff out in the country, about maybe 100 miles away, saying that Mr. Knabel, we believe we have your daughter. We found her on this creek bank here in such and such county, and turned up not being her. Dental records ruled it out. And it just, there's been so many things like that. I check, one of my rows is checking all the remains that crop up all around the area. I call the coroners and things like that. And so we are perhaps as active as you can imagine, or could be possibly. We generally do some things daily on the case. And believe it or not, this far in, we've even gotten strong leads, 3 different leads in the last month. People that call in on the family tip line. And we've you reach when you're in a situation like this. We've used certain people that have psychic ability, mediums, that to see what they see, and if there's any agreement with factual things, we think that's stronger than just feelings and things like that, obviously. But we're very thankful for anybody that's gotten involved. So. But anyway, the Missing in America group helped with all these things. I want to give them all the credit they can. They've spent a lot of time here. A lot of them weren't living here either. Tracy Leonard and his group, this is the private investigator people that Andrea and Missing in America had worked with before Andrea went missing. They helped a great deal, volunteered a lot of their time, no charge. They did pro bono because they were friends with Andrea. Strange and really crazy rumors out there. One happened to be that Andrea was working on her own initiative with a very dangerous case that was mentioned in the docuseries. And there is even the potential that let's say some items that belong to the cartel was found by certain people, and that could have placed her in trouble. There's a individual that is missing here also, that he might have been part of the case that Andrea was working on, and so that is one of the many things that we think could have happened. There was a police officer that I think is incarcerated now, that right now was working for the Audubon Park Police Department when Andrea went missing, that had trouble with women issues. One of the things Aaron and I do to commemorate Andrea's last night that we knew about, her walk back and forth, we do that, Aaron and I, the same exact time every year, just to talk about the case and to heal ourselves, and to try to come to terms with everything, and to try to strengthen ourselves to get through this. It's very difficult, very, very, very difficult. I don't know if it's more difficult ignoring it the best you can or working through it like we do, but we've long decided what we're going to work it until we find out what happened, if we ever do.
Well, it's certainly the more proactive way to go about it, right? I mean, sitting back and waiting for answers is a route, and people do choose that route.
Many do.
But that's a different kind of difficult, right? Because there's less control. At least when you're doing work every day on it, you feel like you're doing something, and that has to count for something, right? Mentally.
Especially now, you educate yourself about everything. And I've watched so many shows and read so many things about this, that, the police missing persons departments, it was 4 when Andrea went missing. It went down to 1 at one point, 1 person for all the people that go missing here. So let's look at a middle-aged woman that's been missing for 6 3/4 years. I'm talking about my daughter, Andrea. And a 4-year-old goes missing today, and a 13-year-old goes missing yesterday, and they're still missing. Who are they going to work on, and who rightfully should they be working on? And obviously, it's the people that are immediate that they can help. But I do like the individuals that we're working with now Louisville Metro Police Department. I'm not sure how much attention we're getting. I do have a hard time getting a meeting. I've got some other means to and connections that I'm going to pursue to get more information from them. And we went down there to get some of the records, the public records, but we want to know more what's going on, and we're going to try to continue to try to do the best we can.
As far, Mike, as far as where the case stands with the police, it's still open, right? It's not, they're not considering it a cold case. There's still somebody assigned to it.
They call it open. I will. It's once again, it's hard to get. It's hard for me to get a meeting. I've requested meetings, and I send him immediately all the leads we get.
Mm-hmm.
What, 3 weeks ago, we got a lead from a person that delivers pizza in Hannibal, Missouri, saying, I've delivered pizza to a trap house to a girl named Andrea that looks just like your daughter. This is the house number. We found it on Google. We sent it to Louisville Metro Police Department. They contact the Hannibal, Missouri Police Department. The house is torn down now. 2 weeks later, it's gone. And so they're still looking at the shelters and for places around there, things like that.
Wow.
We send the little things like that, and so I don't have to make a road trip and for things like that. But there's been a lot of those kind of things. There's been, no kidding, a dozen states where we supposedly have had sightings all around the South, right. The West, Utah, in Utah and Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, just all around.
Mike, what do you think happened?
What I really think happened is she left the house and probably got into a car with an acquaintance of her fiance, somebody she knew and ran in that crowd. And I think something happened from there. They could have, and I don't know if it was one person or several, but I think they wanted to do something. She resisted, and I think she was probably killed by them and disposed of, or she died of like a drug overdose, and they disposed of her body. It's always bugged me who makes a body disappear if you kill someone.
Yeah.
But who does it? Not how difficult it is. Who would do that?
Just the
Person,
mentality that we would take.
A dealer or a cartel,
Yeah.
they'll just leave it where it is to make an example. Who makes it completely disappear?
Well,
if there is
usually someone that's worried about it coming back to them.
If there is a body, we don't know.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. As far as her phone records, was there any information that was turned over by her carrier as far as who else she tried to contact that night after she couldn't get into the house? I mean, did she call friends? Do we know that she texted other people?
Several friends. Okay. She called one of her friends in Missing in America. And I believe it was Suzette. I'm not sure if Suzette picked up. I don't think she did. She called a friend that she stays with occasionally. Her name is Yvette. I'm just going to say her first name. She called some people in the household before she got over there. And that's all I know. I don't know who else she called, but she was actively calling people looking either for a ride or just to do something, get out and do something with them, because she didn't have a job, and apparently she was. I don't know who's up at that time of night, but it sure wasn't me, even at any age. Well, maybe when I was 22,
right.
but not maybe anytime much. But who not on a work night? Who just that's a bad sign. It's a really, really bad sign, guys.
Yeah,
for her to be even up and out at that time.
I would agree. Not a lot of legitimate business gets done at 1:30 in the morning.
So I think someone, not a person of the kind of people she should be around, picked her up. Someone involved, probably in drugs, and and who knows what happened after that. Whether they tried to
But
wake her.
not random. You think this is somebody that she had a connection with that she may have reached out to and said, "Hey, I'm wandering around. I need help." And
Look, guys, that's the most, that's the most likely thing, a non-random one.
yeah,
Yeah.
We
usually,
have thought
yeah,
about the random angle. You know what the random angle is? Not less than a mile away from where she was walking, the Kentucky State Fair was going on at the Kentucky State Fairgrounds, which brings in a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people. It's big. So there's a lot of people not from this town that who knows, she could have made it out to the major thoroughfare called Preston Highway that borders right on the fairgrounds.
Mhm.
It ran into somebody, those kind of people. And that would be the random thing that has crossed my mind.
right.
So that would be it. And I know all these are long shots, but you think about when you're in my position, you think about everything,
Yeah.
Well, you have to.
everything.
Yeah. I mean, once you've sort of ruled out the impossible, whatever you're left with is probable, right? I mean, it
Yep,
has to be something.
that's right.
She didn't disappear into thin air. So
Well,
something
the
happened.
random thing is interesting too, because like just sort of the looking at Andrea, right? If she had not been involved in these things that were upsetting her family, if her life was on track, the random thing might feel a little more like the leading theory to me. But because she had these troubles and these people around her, and everybody was concerned, like, how do you not look there first? That's the most obvious thing. And it doesn't seem like that avenue's been cleared
Right.
officially or unofficially, right? So until that's cleared up, it's hard to look away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree
We
with
um we have recently, by that I mean the last 6 months or so, had people come forward in that one time frame at when she got back home at 11:30, between then and 1:38 when she got to Aaron's house. What was she doing then? We've got some people that have came forward and said that she was at one of two different parties that are pretty much along the way from where she walked. She could have stopped by there. One of
you.
them, she would have walked right by, and there could have been people standing outside, and she would be 10 feet away from them. Knowing Andrea, she's never met a stranger. She would talk to them, and they would probably invite her in. I mean, those things are being checked as well.
Mhm.
And, it could have been a ram to meet somebody new, stop at a party, something bad, something awful happened. Who knows? Drug over it. Who knows what happened?
Right.
Right. Right.
Well, and then when you
She,
get that layer of disconnection from her real life, it becomes even harder to find. It becomes hard to
yeah,
track because there is no real connection, right? It's a chance
yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
I try to put myself in her shoes and to try to see what she feels with all the new things I found out. She had the weight of the world on her. She had, a family that she was taking care of. She had a long road back. She had some problems with substance abuse, I think, in probably the last, let me say, 4 to 6 months of her life. Just then, not before that. She was a very outgoing, intelligent, beautiful woman.
So I guess, Michael, with everything you guys are sorting through and everything you've been through, where does it stand today? And maybe more importantly, like what would you want the public to know and people watching this? Like how can people help? Do you want people calling the family tip line, the official investigation line? What's the best that could come of this interview, in other words, and getting the word out?
Well, I found out a long time ago that publicity in a case does several things. It brings in leads, and it almost makes the police force commit to working harder if it's seen and still out there, um, and people know about it. So we continue to try to work all those angles, and we're very thankful for podcasts like yours that can help do this. So we're trying to get people to bring it to the attention of the police department or call our tip line, and I will give you those numbers whenever you're ready for them. And there, Erin is going to help you find her web pages, and that will invite all of your listeners to join Andrea's Angels, and they'll get all the updates and how to help other people help find their missing loved ones as well. There's about 5 different pages that Erin runs now that helps with things like that and crime around different areas of this region. And so we want somebody to see this and to call us, call the tip line and let me know. And we together can bring the Louisville Metro Police Department in, or they can call it in anonymously if there's some danger involved for themselves or their families. And we understand that completely because there is danger in some of these cases, and there may be a lot of danger in this case. If
Oh,
some of
and
the
the person who may know something might be putting themselves in danger based on what you're saying. If some of the, some of the theories or inclinations that you have towards what may have happened, if the people involved are, if the person who knows or is involved with the same people who may have done something, this is not a upstanding world that they're in, and so there could be repercussions if they came forward, right? And I think that's sometimes what keeps people from coming forward in situations like this. Which, and you told that horrible story earlier about the woman who left the message, and as outlandish as that sounds, you know, if there something did happen and someone was witness to it, it couldn't have been good no matter what it was, and the people who did it, you'd have to be afraid of, right? So
yes.
it's understandable why, it's people are afraid to come forward in situations like this.
Absolutely, and there is true danger out there, and some of the areas I've been to, um, danger's close by. I live in it's not a small city. It's not a little bit bigger than a medium-sized city, and you can get from some of the worst places in this community to where I live in 10 minutes because of
Hmm.
the expressway system.
Hmm.
And so there, if someone wanted to come for you, they could get to you so fast. And so you got to be really, I'm sure these people want to be really careful. And there's some pretty rough things going on out there. And I could tell you guys about a few more of them if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you mean in connection to possible theories here, or just other stories, other horror stories from the area?
Um, in a section of not far from downtown Louisville to the west, I'm not going to mention the neighborhood. We had a trap house that I sat on for maybe a month or maybe 6 weeks. And those people they see who's coming in and out of their neighborhood and who belongs and who doesn't belong, and I guess they got tired of seeing me, and so I'm making my route around this area and this house, and I'm kind of watching, and I had a pickup truck pull out about 2 blocks in front of me on a going down the wrong way of a one-way street, tried to ram me head on. I, I pull over behind the car in front of me to the right, and it speeds off. I drive 2 blocks up and take a left and come back the other way. And another car, probably going 40 to 50 miles over the speed limit, comes slamming right behind me. And then we're going through this viaduct that with two cars go through, there's probably a foot on each side.
Hmm.
He whips over and goes through this and passes me while we're both under there. Like I said, he's going 40 miles, 50 miles over the speed limit. And it was, and they knew I was there and they didn't want me there. And I laid off for a little while, then came back. But things like that, you see
Right.
things that you
Yeah.
can't even believe happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well,
never knew.
you're going into territories that you probably never thought you would go into.
There's
I mean,
things
it's
that go
I'm
on.
very struck because I've been to Louisville and it's a great town. And actually, Sean and I shot a pilot out there together years ago
Mhm.
with an ambulance company. And it felt like a really nice college town with lots of great distilleries, and we never had a bad moment. But I'm struck by the fact that, because we've talked to other people, from similar types of places where you would think, hey, this is kind of the heartland, and again, you're talking about a cartel influence and serious drug problems. And it's just stuff that you just don't think has touched parts of the United States. And I just have to acknowledge that like,
It's
it's everywhere, right?
it is, and it's important to know that nearly the whole time Andrea has been missing, it's been a rough time. It's been It's been COVID issue during that time, and it's been
Right.
these massive protests where many downtowns were destroyed during the protest that we had here. And I can tell you it's much better now. I think this city is healing. I can't speak to many over the country, but I think crime is down in a lot of places right now, and I think it continues to. So I think things are better, but I think there's still some neighborhoods that are controlled by groups. Probably in every city. I think
Yeah.
this city's metropolitan area is about 1.3 million, so it's not tiny, and certainly large enough for that kind of stuff to go on.
I mean, I got to tell you, we've spoken to families on other cases that are in very, very small, very, very rural areas of this country, and they're talking about the cartel presence. And so
Yep.
it's
Yeah,
it's mind blowing.
Ohio, like
You
places
know,
you just wouldn't even think about. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
wild. But as far as the law enforcement piece, and I don't want you to think I'm harping on this, but because we are sort of friends of law enforcement, there's a lot of Sean and I have spent much of our careers, interviewing police, and I'm always in awe of what they do and what they're able to pull off. But why do you think there is a lack of communication? Why do you think it feels like this case has been kind of pushed to the back burner? Uh,
Well, it's nearly impossible for me to put myself in his shoes with all the things he has going. They have a sense of urgency, and I'm sure they have to rank their senses of urgency. When things slow down in that respect, I believe he works on older, open cases, and I think that's the attention that we get. I like the person. I think he's very solid guy, very likable, and I think the things I pass to him, I think he looks into. But I want to know what they're doing to solve this thing, and if they are close, or even maybe I need to meet with him. There may be things that we know that he doesn't even know still, and conversely, to where we could help each other. And I think that'd be. I'm just looking for more communication in the relationship to help look for my daughter, and I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to, if I have to go sit on his desk.
I believe that.
I believe it too. I believe it too.
Yeah.
You've done crazier things than that already. Like, I'm gonna put it
Much.
past you.
You just know a few things.
Do you have hope that you're gonna find out what happened to your daughter one day, Mike?
That's a great question. I watch these stories, I see these news releases. 20 years later, 30 years later, they found out what happened, or they found this person. I think that happened a month or so ago. They found
Mhm.
somebody that's been missing for 30 years. Um, I'm not optimistic. I, for reasons that I want to keep private for right now, think that have nothing to do with a case or anything. These are more private, inside, internal, spiritual things for me. I feel like she's gone. And but I can also tell you that I'm going to keep looking. And if I didn't feel like I wanted to, Erin would make me, and I would make her. But I got to tell you, and I don't mean to say this to look for sympathy, is I feel like I may have to die to find out what happened to her.
I think I understand. Yeah,
Makes sense.
I
It's
think I
been, if you know what a long journey this has been, and there, there are some of these little tip things I'd give you. There have been hundreds of them. Think about that. Hundreds. Early in the case, there were complete urgency. Private investigator calls me at 1 a.m. At 2 o'clock, we're going to go into this house. We have her at this house. We've identified her. This person said she's there. Bring your firearm. Let's go. We're going in. We're crashing this house. So it just thin air, poof, and they all just keep happening like that. And we send these things, and they just seem to die. The story dies, and I don't know to what extent they're looked in or ruled out, but I don't know that maybe they already know what happened, but don't have the material to prove it in court, and they can't
Sometimes
tell
that's the
us.
case. Yeah.
They
No,
can't
we've run
tell
into
us.
that. Yep. Yep.
We
Where
know
it's
they can't tell us,
yeah. Well,
and
they don't
so
want to blow it, right? And they're waiting for that chance, which is that's a great case scenario, right? Where they
Well, I
actually
think that
have somebody
happens
target.
more often than we want to admit in this country
Hmm.
too. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that you really look at it. there's a large percentage of missing people that are never found, and there's a large percentage, I think it's 50% of homicides where they do have a body still go unsolved. And it's not always because they don't know who did it. It's bringing it to court and convincing 12 strangers beyond a reasonable doubt that they did it.
Yeah.
And that's a bar that, it's sometimes they don't think they can clear and they have to wait. And it's unfortunate,
Yeah. I mean,
That's right. And
Sean and I
plus,
have covered
plus
cases
when you,
where
s-
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I just
I
say
was just,
when you stock all the other new cases on top of this and you keep doing it and you keep doing it,
Yeah.
it just pushes you further behind. And
yep.
the time to look at an semi-open case that's coming up on 7 years old is may seem futile to them.
Well, these
Yeah.
guys, it's like Tetris when all the blocks start piling up faster than you can move them around. It's the screen is full. It's like,
Yep.
unfortunately, crimes don't stop.
It truly
True.
is. We had a detective, I think he worked Denver. He's deceased now too. Work on the case, and he said it was like a whack-a-mole case, and he's never seen so many variables that could have happened in any case that he's worked on for I think over 30 years of
Wow.
that kind of work. It was
Yeah.
his opinion.
Yeah.
Mike, if you could, sorry, Sean. I was just going to say, Mike, if you could say anything to anybody who might have a child or relative who's in a spot similar to what your daughter was, and if you could say anything to anybody who's dealing with this kind of stuff before something happens, what would your advice be? What would you, if you even have any?
Well, I can say it, and I do to friends and other family members, and just it's common knowledge that not always common, even amongst people that are so-called educated. Uh, to so closely monitor the people you're around, your children are around, and your family's around, and I feel like I failed by not being strong enough, even though I know she wouldn't have listened to me. I voiced my opinion, and I guess at some point it's her responsibility. She was not a child when she went missing. She was in her middle 30s. I mean, but still, you've got to, any of your loved ones that are struggling, you've got to get in front of it, whether they want to or not, and you've got to come in with a strong plan and possibly work with your whole family to do it as a group. You've got to intervene. You've got to intervene before something happens, and we didn't. Um, in an organized manner. We did it maybe individually, but that wasn't strong enough, and it didn't work. And maybe it caused us to have a chance to save someone we didn't know that was going to need to be saved.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mike.
Well put.
I would imagine it's not easy to say that, and thank you for putting that out there for other people. Though it does sound to me like you tried. It sounds like you were trying pretty hard, and you were expressing boundaries and warnings and trying to do the right thing.
I do want to tell you one
Whatever
thing
that's
about
worth.
Andrea, and I think this is what made her very special and very kind, sweet, empathic person. She was struggling herself, and the extent that she was struggling here from what we've spoke about in every way possible, every way, professionally, socially, in her family life, everything. And in spite of that, in these struggles, she would still try to help other people by searching for the missing people. And if anybody in your audience needs a reason, if they have some information to help, there's a reason right there. This person would help you while she's the one, in fact, needed help at that immediate time right there that we couldn't really solve ourselves with the family. So she cared enough to help people while she was struggling herself, and I think that speaks highly of her. And I think she deserves praise for that, and she's got my full respect for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing that comes up on every piece of coverage I've seen or read about Andrea is how remarkable it is that she devoted her time to that, and how what a sad irony, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, it is that ultimately she herself became a missing person, when she had such empathy for those families and cared so deeply about finding those people.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your daughter. And I know this stuff is not easy to go through, and you've been living it and dealing with it and confronting it head on for years now. And I know that's hard. So my hat is off to you, sir, for that, for everything you've been through. I think the rest of us can't even imagine what that's like. But I do hope some good news comes your way sooner rather than later. And if our audience has any information or any tips, we're going to drive them to the lines and the websites and everything that you're going to give us. And let's stay in touch and keep the conversation open. I mean, Miles and I never shut the door on these cases. So if there's news, if you want to come back and talk about a development, anything at all, our door is always open to you.
And if you all have missed something, you're welcome. We can get on for 10 minutes if you want. Do you mind if
Sure.
I show you this flyer so you can have the phone
Yeah,
numbers and
Oh,
please
things?
do.
please do. Yeah.
Can you see that fully?
I don't think
We can
fully.
see the
Back it up a little
top.
bit.
I think, Michael, if you could send it to us, we'll put it up on screen. Like
It's going to be on
we'll
Aaron's webpage. It's on Finding Andrea's webpage
okay.
on
Great.
Okay.
Facebook. That's one of Aaron's web pages. She'll have all this.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are still close, and I'm really sorry for your family that you've been through all this and everything that's going on between you and Sarah too. I mean, my heart really goes out to you.
100%.
That's okay. We've managed it in ways that I think are helpful by depending on our families and um, spiritual beliefs and prayer and when your own flesh and blood is missing, you feel like you're looking for yourself. How can you quit? You can't quit
Right.
on because you're quitting on yourself. So Andrea was a special girl, and she got way off track, and hopefully we can find her. I thank you all for what you're doing, and like I said, if you need any more, feel free.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for the time.
Gentlemen, have a great day.
You
You
too. We'll
too.
talk soon.
Bye bye.
Take
Bye.
care. Wow. I mean that's a dedicated father. That's the first thing that comes to my mind after speaking to Michael. Just,
Yeah,
you know, there's so many cinematic references that I was thinking about while he was telling us about what he's been doing. And the
it's like a
last,
Liam Neeson movie, right? I mean, like,
well, but it's actually what's his name? Who's the guy who played Patton?
oh, you're thinking of the movie Hardcore?
I'm thinking of Hardcore with George C. Scott. Yeah,
Yeah,
where he's going into these horrible places, looking for his daughter.
yeah,
And he's just this like regular, dude.
that's a deeper cut, but
Yeah.
probably more accurate. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You see what people will do.
Although I don't know that George C. Scott was strapped, and it sounds like Michael was strapped every time he went out.
I think Michael
It's,
came to play.
well,
Yeah, well,
It's Louisville,
well, we've both been there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to see what people will do for their kids, and it just breaks my heart that this very nice gentleman has had to spend his time doing this stuff, and the anguish and the pain is so apparent. But what else can you do? I mean, it's basically what I think most parents imagine they would have to do. I will get a gun and I will knock on every door in every neighborhood until I find my kid.
yeah,
Um, it sounds like the kind of thing that you just say. Michael actually did it. It's really
right.
impressive. It's
Oh
very
yeah,
striking.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you can see, I mean, he's not like a superhero or anything. He's just a guy he's just moving forward and doing what he has to
The
do.
dad who wants answers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which just shows you, what people are capable of when push comes to shove. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
do we
There's,
want to talk a little bit about the family and the dynamic? And there's some weird stuff there, right? And I feel like we're going to have to examine that at some point while we're
yep.
looking at this case. And I don't know if our case breakdown is going to cover that necessarily, but I do think that at some point you and I are going to have to look at that because there's some anomalies there that are very, very strange that Michael didn't even get into in his interview that you and I are already aware of.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
look, I mean, it's hard to ignore the fact
yeah,
that there had been drama in the house where Andrea was staying. that she left and came back and was not allowed in. It's hard to ignore that the first story was that nobody heard her, but that later
Mhm.
evolved into, okay, we heard her and we decided not to let her in, but we were scared of her. So what does that mean? I mean, it could be people sometimes want to give the version of events that they want, to be the public facing version of the story just because they're uncomfortable, and then they later change it when things get too
Mhm.
real, or it could be an indication of some level of responsibility or guilt. But it doesn't look good, right? I mean, you
Doesn't
don't
look
like,
good no matter what. And then,
yeah,
things that happened since then also kind of are a bit strange. Again, I don't know that we should go too deep on it here, but I think it
yeah.
does have to be talked about.
I think let's put a pin in it. And yeah, like you said, we'll probably have to make a longer video where we unpack a lot of this stuff a little bit
Yeah.
more because it's
And
it's
not,
important.
well, I was just going to say, not to say that I don't think that's, what Michael's alluding to by telling us that they're on the outs and they haven't spoken in years. Because we've seen that with families before where sometimes families get fractured, after a horrible event like this.
Well, it
People
seems
don't
like
always,
Michael already didn't like her fiance and had issues from the past that are completely unrelated to this disappearance, and
right.
this exacerbated that fracture, so families
But
are
it does
different.
sound like the fiance shared some of the same issues or ran in some of the same kinds of circles, if not the exact same circles, that Andrea was dealing with, right? So, I think that that's interesting and it needs to be talked about. And it's talked
Yeah.
about quite a lot on the internet. So obviously we're going to have to address it. But I mean, I again, just like I said to Michael, I'm always struck, because as you guys know, because we talk about it every now and then, Sean grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in Brooklyn. We're both kind of like very city guys. We grew up in these sort of, high crime coastal cities. And when you come from a place like that, and then you go to a place that's more, the heartland, you don't think that you're going to hear about, Mexican drug cartels and a crank epidemic and all of this stuff. And I am just struck over and over again when we do one of these cases. Obviously, Louisville's a big place. We've both been there, but you just don't like these stories about trap houses and all of this stuff. I mean, it's everywhere, man. It seems like this entire country has been infected by crime and drugs, and it's it's segregated into these different areas, right? But it's there. It's like what Mike said was really interesting. He was like, you 10 minutes away, I'm in this. He was obviously saying like he's financial advisor, retired. He did well for himself. He's in a nice place, but he's like 10 minutes on the freeway, and you're in a totally different world.
Yeah.
And the fact that like his daughter, who, he obviously it seems like, well, I guess one of his daughters maybe is involved with someone who maybe has some issues, but overall it seems like his family did pretty well and is kind of like upper middle class, and still one of his daughters got pulled into all these issues kind of later in life, which I do
Yeah.
find really interesting, right? Because like, you and I are no strangers to these types of things in our own lives, but it's kind of like when you're younger, right? And
Yeah.
then you gradually shake
Well,
it off.
so what I was gonna say is like I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna-ish or like McGruff the crime dog or something, but like it's really hard not to notice the overlap between people from well-to-do backgrounds with college degrees and bright futures going missing, and the common theme is they got involved in drugs or started running in groups of people who were involved in the drug trade, right? And you look at all
Yeah.
these people like Lacey Anderson and others that we've covered on our channel, it's like there's no reason this person should have disappeared other than their involvement in this lifestyle that pulled them out of an otherwise pretty normal track. Like these are all American kids, to borrow a phrase, that have educations and futures and normal families, and the thing that ruins that is this. So yeah, when you say the country's infected with it, I mean, I think that's a great word. It's crept into communities from every social strata, every socioeconomic background. It's taking people and ruining their lives, and in a lot of cases disappearing them. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a national epidemic.
We could both agree this wasn't a random disappearance, right? In
I'd
our
be
opinion.
shocked. I'd be shocked if it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
me
guess it's
too.
on the table, like Michael said, it's on the table, but it doesn't seem to be
Well,
anyone's
and
leading
also if you
team.
look at where she was, like it wasn't a bad area. where she went missing. I mean, that's why he brought up the fair, because like that was the one thing that he could point to that like, well, maybe there were some nefarious characters,
Right.
traveling with the fair, right? But I don't
Well, and
think.
it's funny because we talk about the story of Kirsten Bruggeman, which we covered, who was also walking late at night, without anybody, had been sort of turned
Mhm.
away by the people that she was with, but she was not anywhere in a part of town where she lived. It was a dangerous part of town, and it does seem like that whatever happened there was probably a random person encountering
Yes.
her at the wrong time. This is
Yeah.
has those similarities, except she's in a safe part of town. She's familiar with it. Her family all lives there. It's really not the kind of place where there's probably dangerous types of people prowling, at 2 in the morning. Although I guess that could happen anywhere, to Michael's point. It's
Sure.
it's
Sure.
possible, but
I don't know. The Carnies from what's that old movie that Guillermo del Toro remade? I just don't like that. Just doesn't seem when there's these other factors. It's kind of you have to like write a ledger, right? And these are the elements that this victim is dealing with. This is what's going on in their life. These are the people that she might have known. When you do that, that weighs heavier on the scale to me than the carnies that might have
yeah.
been setting up a tent. I it
Well,
feels very like 1940s to me, and that's we're not in the 1940s, and the drug thing seems more likely to be a
yeah.
connection to her disappearance.
Well, I think it's part of the mystery. It seems like her family is aware that the people she was around were dangerous, but they don't seem to know necessarily the details of everyone who that group entails and what the problems might have been with those people and how exactly Andrea was involved with them. So there's this level
Right.
of mystery around like, did she owe somebody money? Did she get a ride from someone who wanted to target her for some other reason, or like there's just it's like that part is behind the veil. We know there were bad actors in her life. We know she was reaching out to more and more disparate groups of acquaintances trying to find help that night, to the point where she probably got to somebody, like Michael said, a friend of a friend or a friend of a fiance who may have been responsible for this. For what
Yeah.
reason though, aside from they're kind of a bad person involved in bad things, I don't know. Therein lies the mystery.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it's really
but
hard to say.
yeah, but my compass is for sure pointing in that direction as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that some of you guys watching are familiar with this case. It's been well publicized, obviously. So why don't you let us know what you think? I'd love to know what your theories are on what may have happened to Andrea and who may have been involved in what may have happened to Andrea.
So leave it in the comments, guys. And once again, if you enjoy this channel or you support the mission of platforming these families and these stories and trying to find answers in these unsolved cases, consider becoming a member. The link is below the video here. Otherwise, you can find us as a podcast anywhere where you do listen to podcasts if you prefer this as audio only. And that being said, Miles, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it. Other than, stay tuned. There's going to be more coverage of this case, and we'll do some comment reacts as well. So yeah, just stick around, guys. A lot more to come.
Thanks, everybody.